Angela, welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, I am so grateful to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into your journey and your story. It's fascinating. You and I met at an event in DC, and I just loved what you shared, right? I think what you teach people to do, which is overcome their financial narrative, essentially,
Yeah.
is super powerful. Like you and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I wish I met you years ago because I used to tell myself money was hard to come by, it was hard to make, it was hard to whatever. And then at some point, I don't know when it was, there was a switch, and now for me, money's easy, right? Money flows. It's
Yeah.
it's just energy. It's an energy exchange, and I don't know how that happened, but we're gonna break down how it can happen for so many people. But where I want to start is who is Angela today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
So, Angela today is a person who's extremely driven by helping other people. Like, I always helped people before in tactical ways, like if they needed help moving or doing things, right? I was always really good at helping people with that.
Hmm.
Now, what I've evolved into is helping people overcome their challenges with money and then also just reconnect to themselves and to whatever spiritual presence, right, they're a part of. And so that's who I am today, and I love it.
Yeah, and the friends who help you move, they're a godsend, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm now at an age like, and so any of my friends listening, don't ever ask me to help you move. The answer is no. Hire some movers. Like that's my take on that one. But God bless you for being that person for so many people. So like, what is it about your life, do you think, that made you somebody who wants to help?
I really struggled when I was a kid just to feel loved, in all honesty. And it's taken me a lot of years to come to grips with that too. And so the way I connected love was through performance. And so if I did other things for people, if I helped them, then I received what I felt was love from someone. And so that's really the basis of it. I was looking for someone to love and care about me and found a way to do it through helping them. Not that I
Mm.
don't, I mean, I understand now that my nature of helping is part of essentially who I am as a human being, but then I did it as performance for love.
Interesting. Why do you
Yeah.
feel like you were lacking love as a child?
My parents grew up, both of them, in very unemotional, unattached households. And so they didn't have the tools or understanding of how to communicate their love or necessarily have an understanding of how to show love and demonstrate it. And so when I was growing up as a child, I was very celebrated when I did good things, right? But I wasn't a child who was told that I was loved often.
Mm.
I mean, I know my parents loved me to the best of their ability, but they didn't demonstrate it and they certainly didn't say it. And so because of that, I internalized this and I don't they don't love me, you know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. And I love this type of conversation with people because there's so much childhood trauma, even in healthy households,
Hmm.
that we don't realize, right? Like I tell a lot of people my story and they go, "Oh my God, I don't even want to tell you my story because it's not the same thing, right? It's not as extreme, it's not as whatever." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, you don't understand. Like trauma is presented to us in so many different ways and it could be such a passing glance, right? And then it manifests in the same way. And
Hmm.
I've shared this story a couple times on the podcast, but they did a study. They took two kids, and one kid grew up in the suburbs and he was bullied in school. And they took a kid from the city whose mother was shot in his face. Like he was there
Oh
and his mother
wow.
got shot and killed in front of him. And they scanned their brains and the effect on their brain was exactly the same. And
Wow.
I think that's the most fascinating thing because everybody has their stuff. So what was your realization to go, oh, that's what I'm doing? I'm searching for love by giving things. Like what was it for you that you was your like awakening?
It's interesting. So my actual awareness journey, that's how I like to call it, started when I was like 38. So I was fairly late in life to figuring things out. I'd always been an overachiever, a performer. I'm a person who can do a lot of things well. So for me, it was like natural to perform and achieve. And so at the age of 38, I sat back. Had made a decision to leave a corporate job, go into business for myself, and fully commit to being an entrepreneur. And at that age, I started to look at what I was seeking for approval. And the moment was when I told my mom I was going to do that. When I told her I was leaving my career, which I made a lot of money in, to open a restaurant and sink my life savings into, at that moment, she was so angry with me that I was making this decision to do that. She didn't talk to me for like 6 months.
Wow.
Yes. And
Wow.
I'm like 38, 37 years old. right? And I've got this situation, and I knew, like, I was even afraid to tell her because I knew what her reaction was going to be. And so in that 6 month period of time when I didn't talk to her, I really evaluated our relationship and the dynamic of it. And that was when I realized, holy cow, I have been living my life to perform for my parents. Like
Yeah.
it was that simple. And so breaking it down, doing the work, reconnecting to me and who I am, understanding what really makes me tick, what I love, why I'm on earth is so part of who I am now. But that journey has taken me, I mean, I'll be 47 in June. So that journey to where I am today has taken 9 years, and it's been a beautiful process, but it's been a process.
Yeah. Why restaurant? I think I said that to you right off the rip when I first met you. I was like, why would you get into the food industry?
You know, it's so funny. I was looking so hard for an escape hatch. And I, at the time, was not very deep into my faith at that point either. That was a whole part of this journey as well, was kind of reconnecting to God too. And so at that time, I was looking for an escape hatch and trying to find a way to control the outcome, right? And so I knew going into business for myself was the right answer. I didn't have enough funding to buy a mechanical company, which is where my prior experience had been. So I love making people happy, right? And
Yeah.
performing for them. And food is one of those ways. Like I was always the person who, if you came to my house for a weekend, I was up early in the morning making you this amazing breakfast, right? So the brunch business, which is where I ended up, it was just a part of who I was. My first job was the freaking Waffle House at 16. You
By the way,
know?
I've never been to a Waffle House.
What?
Yeah.
Never?
Never. Like I'm in Florida all the time, and Waffle Houses are everywhere down there. We don't have them here. That's part of the reason.
What a disappointment you are. You need to go to a Waffle House the next time you are around one. And it might be a little dirty looking in there. But the beauty of it is the kitchen is in front of you. So you can watch them cook your food. You know what they're doing to it, and you can see how it happens. So
Yeah.
that's your job. As your friend, I want you to eat at a Waffle House the next time you're close to one.
That's it. I will. I certainly will. But so my thing is like, I don't even know why we're talking about this, but I'm not a breakfast person. So like, I mean, my wife makes some killer eggs, and I'll eat them, but I'm not like a go blow it out breakfast person. We just aren't,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's part of it. But I will make it a mission of mine to make sure the next time I'm near a Waffle House, but I'll do it at like
Yeah.
2 a.m.
Well, I'm going to tell you what to eat then. If you don't want to eat breakfast food, don't. Get a patty melt. Get a patty melt. The patty melts are amazing. And get a bowl of Burt's chili.
Okay. Done.
Okay? That's what
We're
you
doing
do. Get a patty melt and a bowl of Burt's chili if you don't want to eat breakfast food. And you will also not be disappointed. And the Burt's chili is like that dry, dehydrated, like that you reconstitute when you get it, right? It comes in these dried packets, and we added sausage patties and all the meats to it and then cooked it. But I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed with Burt's chili and a patty melt.
I am going to run this through AI, and the suggested titles to the show are going to be "What to Order at Waffle House" with Angela
Yes!
Goodman.
Yes. Do it. Do it.
So obviously, look, right, like it's funny because the beginning of your journey of healing was also you were going into the same thing, which is serving people and making people happy. You know, that's a fascinating thing. Like, how do you come to terms with that? You're like, I'm healing, but I'm also now in this business that's part of that trauma.
So at the beginning of going into that business, I had zero awareness that I needed to be healed from that. So I look back at it now, and I really believe it was a divine, offering, because it allowed me to really start that healing journey. Going through that process and learning so much about myself through it had to happen. It had to happen to arrive where I'm getting goosebumps all over. It had to happen to arrive where I am today, and to be of value and purpose to the people around me to help them identify how to heal. And so I'm so blessed with it, but man, it was hard. It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that journey. Well, first, I actually want to ask you why were you drawn to creating your own success and the entrepreneurial journey? Like, I think that's something that people have, like this burning desire inside of them, and then they jump in and they're like, what did I do? Right? It's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
What was drawing you? Because you had that career, you had that thing, you were set up for life.
Yeah. So the deal is, and you heard the story while we were at the event. When I was 8 is actually when I started my entrepreneurial journey. I sold expired candy that my mom used to merchandise from Nabisco, and she almost lost her job. And I sold the candy, and it's that story is going into the book I'm currently writing right now, and is the trailer for like my talk on it, right? But at either rate, so that's how my entrepreneurial journey started. So when I was working my career at Carrier, I actually started a construction business with my now ex-husband, my first ex-husband, started a construction business with him, and we flipped and remodeled homes in the greater Roanoke area. And so I did all the back end, the marketing, the business, all of that stuff, and he did all the hands-on work. So that company is still alive today, but it started back in 2002. And when we split up, and then I continued to focus on my career, I then started helping other businesses. So I ran and managed a community theater at the same time and did other things. So I never really left the spirit of entrepreneurship, but
Right.
I was afraid to do it on my own.
Yeah, so I'm sure people are listening, being like, "I want to hear this expired candy story." So could you share that with my audience so they understand this, and then I'll talk about my takeaway from that event that we were at.
Okay, great. So at the age of 8, my mom worked for RJ on Nabisco, and she was a merchandiser, which the job of that is to go into grocery stores, convenience stores, and all of that, and count the candy that's on the shelf, look and see what's expired, remove the expired candy, and order new. And then once the new stuff comes in, you go in and restock. So she had been in this job for maybe 3 or 4 months. It wasn't very long. And she would come home from these stores bringing this expired candy with her. And she was supposed to dispose of it, never did. She'd bring it home. So we had like these paper bags full of expired candy. And I didn't really like that candy. I wasn't really a fan of the candy that came home. I liked the Bonkers. So for those of you that remember those, they were amazing. I'm sad they don't exist anymore. So I liked the Bonkers, but everything else I was like, oh, you know what? I could probably get rid of this without throwing it away. And one day I was on the school bus. I was chewing some gum, and a kid asked me, "Oh man, I'd really love to have some gum." And I said, "Well, my mom has all this candy at home. Is there something you like?" And I went through the list of what she had, and they were really turned on to it. And so I came the next day with the candy, and I went home that afternoon, and I said, "Man, I could make money off of this. Like I could sell this stuff, right?" I'm 8 years old. I'm like, I've done lemonade stands and whatever else, right? So at this point in time, I'm like, oh, I could make money off this. So I went on the school bus and took orders the next morning. I made a full inventory of what I had. I signed a price to it, took orders, came back on the bus the next day, gave people their candy, and they gave me the money. And I did this for like a couple of months. And I had this little like paper, like wooden wrapped like box that I would keep the money in. And I had the order sheets in. So that would go in my backpack every day. And one day, this little kid from the 6th grade got caught chewing gum in class. And his teacher said, "Where'd you get the gum from?" And needless to say, he ratted me out. And his mom actually also happened to work for that company. And I left that detail out the day we were at the event. But his mom actually also worked for that company. She had a similar job as my mom, but was in a different route. And so she told my mom's boss. And
Oh
so
my
then my
gosh.
mom's boss then pulled her in and was like, "Hey, you do understand you could lose your job for this. You're supposed to dispose of this candy." Part of what I said in the story too is that my mom's boss has been my stepdad now for like 30 years.
Oh
So
my
they
gosh.
actually at that time were like starting this other kind of relationship, which is really why she didn't end up losing her job. But at either rate, so yeah, she could have lost her job. So she found out that day. She came home. She opened up my little backpack, grabbed out my wooden box full of money, and I got the what for and whatever from one side to the other. We were supposed to go on a skiing trip that weekend, and I got grounded for 2 whole weeks. I was not allowed to come out of my room at all. They brought me food to my
Oh
room
my
when it was
gosh.
time for me to eat. Like I was totally isolated other than going to school. And I felt so guilty and I felt super ashamed. And, I could have cost my mom her job. And it was not an awareness I had at 8 years old. And anyway, so that kind of killed my entrepreneurial spirit a little bit at
I
that age.
bet.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
bet. Yeah, it's at this event they went around and said, "What's everybody's takeaway?" Right? Because it was a smaller event. And first of all, I despise being put on the spot like that. Like it's like, and then we go around the room, and I'm the 30th person to say anything, so I'm like, oh, I could say whatever they just said, right? Like that's my
Yeah.
takeaway. But I was like, my takeaway is to stop selling expired candy,
I love
right?
it.
Like it
So
was,
good.
it's a story that imprinted on me because I did something illegal as well, which was selling fake autographs to people.
Hmm.
Like I would sign baseball cards, like copy autographs of the players and stuff, and I would sell them to kids at school, which is really messed up. By the way, we're both going to jail after this. Like after we've now shared this publicly. But do you believe like that because your mom took the money, I made money in a certain way? Do you think that began a narrative for you around money?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100% at that point in time. So I also what I did with the money when I was that age is I would sneak out of the house, tell my mom I was going to my friend's house and ride my bike like a mile away to the corner convenience store where I bought the candy I actually wanted to eat. And so here I am at 8 years old driving outside of the neighborhood on major roads to get to this convenience store, Wynn's grocery store by the way. And so I would drive there, I would, on my bike, and then I would bring it home. And I had this Barbie suitcase that like was for clothes, Barbie clothes and Barbies. And I filled it with all the candy I wanted to eat and I hid it under my bed. So from that perspective, it totally created this money is bad, receiving money is something that you shouldn't be doing at for what I got it for. And then I had the guilt and shame also because she later found my candy stash, which was, at that time, she did not buy the candy for us to eat, right? So candy and sugar and all of that was something she didn't want in our diets. So then I had the guilt and shame associated with how I chose to spend the money also.
Yeah.
So that definitely became super, super ingrained inside of me and has taken me time to work through also. And that's one of the things that you alluded to, right? This is what I help people with. Where in our lives do we identify this point of guilt and shame that we've associated to money in some type of way? Because likely that's why the flow is somewhat blocked and you figure out how to release that in order to help release the flow of money.
Yeah. So who do you think in the world has a negative narrative around money? Like, what's the percentage of people? Because I think it's a lot higher than most people think.
I would say probably 80%, to be honest with you. Even people who have money in their bank account and have savings don't ever feel like they have enough. And so in this world, we always have whatever we want to access. So the more we hold on and leave it as a reservoir, sometimes that blocks the flow of money to us. And if we always feel like we're in lack and we don't have enough, even when we have way more than other people, that is a part of that 80%.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I think a lot of people don't even realize that. Like, oh, wait, hold on. I have saved more money than I've ever saved in my life, and I don't want to spend it. Then what's the point of having it? Like, what's the point, right? So, how do you walk somebody through the process of rewiring your brain? Because you're literally rewiring neural pathways in your brain in order to tell yourself something different subconsciously.
Yeah.
Because we can say to ourselves all the time, like, "Oh no, money flows and this and that." But if you don't fully believe it at your core
Mhm.
and live in that way, then it's not going to happen. How do you work with people through that process?
It is a long process and not everybody's ready for it. It's similar to me at 38. That took me that long to be ready for the awareness of the transformation of my life. So, if someone is ready to go on that journey, step number one is full transparency. I literally make them sit down and go through every single penny of debt they have, every single payment they make, and every single piece of money they have somewhere in a bank account. So it is about unlocking that full financial authenticity, if you will, because most of us also lie about what we have, right? Most of us also will exaggerate or understate the amount of money or the holdings that we have. So it is about allowing yourself to be fully authentic and transparent about your financial situation with another human being. That operates kind of as the first release. And it allows a lot of people to put eyes on their full financial situation and not sort of just like block out or tune out whatever it is they don't want to know. So that's
Yeah.
step number one. And then once we get to the point of that full authenticity and transparency, then we go through the process of what does your connection to money look like? Where did your thoughts about money come from? And so we go through some of these triggers and traumas and conditioning that we've had. Like, some of us, money's been bad for us because our parents said people with money are bad, right? So there's a lot of conditioning that we take on, even if it's not a fully traumatic experience. So then we work through that, and then we talk about, okay, where are you in your faith? Like, where are you in your spirituality? Regardless, I'm a Christian, I believe in God. So even if that's not your premise and that's not where you are, you can still block the flow of that to you through not communicating well with what you believe is your source, right? So we go through that from a spiritual perspective. What does money mean in the spirituality that you're a part of? And we walk through that too, because belief in the fact that you are abundant financially comes from that spiritual piece. And to your point, if you don't fully believe, you will block that and you won't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? You talk about the spiritual side of things. So I consider myself a Christian. I'm not religious by any means. My
Yeah, same.
grandfather was a pastor his entire life. At one point, ran all the Methodist churches in the state of New Jersey, like
Wow.
pretty high up in that. And so I grew up in the church and did all those things. And a lot of how people perceive the Bible, and I think that's the biggest
Mm-hmm.
thing. By the way, anybody listening, and read "What Is the Bible" by Rob Bell. It'll retrain your brain how to read
Love
the
it.
Bible. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But a lot of in that Bible and the religious teachings is money is bad, right? So like, how can you take somebody who's deep in their faith, who goes, well, no, in the Bible it says I shouldn't have anything. How do you rewire that? Because it literally people will take their little snippets out of the Bible and go, this
Oh
this
yeah.
is what I believe. How do you work with somebody like that?
There are a lot of scriptures to the contrary of that also that are direct word from God. So in some cases, they're reading something from someone that's not direct word from God and then associating it with the fact that money is bad. And in some instances, money was bad for some of those people because they weren't using it they weren't stewarding God's money in the way it was meant to be used. And so it's about, okay, let's talk about what do you believe? Let's talk about these scriptures. I'm not here to argue with you, but I'm going to give you some other scriptures that point to the inverse of that. So then you sit down and you work it out for yourself, what you then truly believe. The challenge with the Bible, as you know, is there's so many different translations of it. And so some versions of the Bible say a line one way and other versions of the Bible, translate it in a very different context. So you also have to be aware of that too as you're going through any English translations that you're reading something that is closest to God's word.
No,
Yeah.
I love it, and it's so true. And I think it was important to kind of point that out because it is that narrative that we've told ourselves, or our parents told us, or society told us, or
Mhm.
whatever. In your early days of having money, like we're all pretty broke at 21 years old.
Mhm.
I mean, I lived a certain life at one point, and I'll never forget this, where I went to buy a slice of pizza that was $2, and my credit card didn't go through, and the guy gave me the slice of pizza anyway, and like I felt pathetic, right? And so I think like you even carry that narrative in a sense, right? Like,
Mhm.
when you're and I'm so glad you're saying this because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh man, I need to hire you, even though I thought I fixed my narrative around money. Like, so here's the crazy thing. I just said met with a guy yesterday and we were chatting, and I was like, I don't have access to like I can't go online and see how much money I have because I'm locked out, and I've been locked out of my bank account for like 8 months. And
Eight
so,
months.
oh, at least. And so
Oh boy.
I had to write a bunch of checks after my event because you got to pay for it. And so
Yeah.
I called my bank account to find out how much money I had because I had no idea. And I was like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. Like I had no clue how much money
Yeah.
I had. So you talk
Yeah.
about like even avoidance of
Yes.
like I knew I was good, but I didn't know I was that good.
Yeah.
Like even like the avoidance of like all these things. And like I think it's important to share this because there's so many different ways that people have this money narrative. They
Yeah.
might not think they have a problem, but they
Yeah.
usually do, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody were to work with you and go through this process, and like you said, it's a very detail oriented, takes a long time.
Yeah.
But what kind of rewards do you see people getting after they go through this healing process?
What I love to see in clients that I've worked with is money is not the only area that they have blocked. they think they have everything figured out in all these other areas. But once we get to the root of their connection to self and their connection to their spiritual life, they unlock other areas in their life also. So that is my favorite part. It's like the light bulb will go off about what they're, to your point, like if they're in avoidance, it's likely they're avoiding other things also. So then they go through this process of, and I walk them through the process. Okay, if you're avoiding this to this degree, what else are you avoiding in your life? What else are
Mm,
you hiding in your life? Like I find that a lot with clients I've worked with in the past, they're hiding their financial situation from someone, their spouse, their family. They're, not truthful when they talk about the situation that they're in. So then it's like, okay, well, if you're hiding that and that's fairly important and you're ashamed to talk about it, what else are you ashamed of? What else are you hiding from people where you're not allowing your full authentic self to come out? Because when we all open up our full authentic selves, we utilize our gifts and we get to help other people and we shine this massive light that gives so much impact to the rest of the people we're around that it allows them to do that too. And that's my favorite part by far.
yeah, I love it. And so when you work with people, have you found that even people who have millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, do they also have a weird narrative around money?
Yeah, I found some who do. I found some who do. Some of them, they do it for an ego purpose, right? And so it's
Yeah.
about identifying where that part of their ego came from and how to appropriately deal with that. Because in a lot of cases, if they have that much money and they're showing it off in certain ways, right? They're a show off type of person, if you will. That type of person then is hiding something else that they are insecure about in their life. And so they're incomplete in some other area, which means they're lacking wholeness and they can't get to their authentic self either. So even people now, there's a lot of people who have a lot of money. Like let's take Ed Milet, right? He's been on your show. I've had the opportunity to coach with him one on one. He's a big part of my awareness journey. And because of that, like I can fully say, knowing him the way I do, he is a person operating out of wholeness. And he still has some insecurities that from his conditioning way back on, but he knows them and he's aware of them and he tackles those. So somebody, like him that I've met and I know, he's got a lot of money, obviously, very successful. But he is stewarding it in a way that makes sense for him, and he's also able to be his full self.
Yeah. And, I obviously talking about Ed and watching his journey, he opened up a lot about the traumas on my show. He actually cried on my show. But he talked about, what he talks about now is which is a deep spiritual journey that he's on. I've seen a lot of very successful men specifically who go out and they make all the money and they feel so empty, right? Like, oh, I did all the things that society said I should do, and now I have $100 million in the bank. I think at the time that I interviewed him, he was worth $500 million. So it's like crazy amounts of money.
Yeah.
But like he got to that place and then the
Yes.
real journey begins, right?
Yes.
Then he started to have to go deeper because he's like, well, I'm not happy. Like I have to figure out this next piece. And that's what you help people do early on. But what's the realization if somebody's listening to this right now and they're going, well, I'm not really relating to this, or I don't think I'm that person. Like what questions should they ask themselves to figure out if they do have any sort of blocking?
So some of the big questions to ask yourself is, do I often check my bank balance? Okay. Because if you have a lot of money and you're often checking your bank balance, there's a question mark there for me. Because if you know you're comfortable, there's no reason to check your bank balance multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you don't have any money and you're checking your bank balance multiple times a day, that's a big red flag also, because that means that you're so attached to what you mean with your money that even when you have none, you go into this panic and anxiety. Like that's a huge red flag. So how often do you check your bank balance? Another question that I might ask is
Never.
how often? Well, okay, never's not exactly good either, right? We got it, because the other piece of it too is as you grow and as your financial situation continues to get bigger, you should also be helping your community and stewarding in a way. I'm not saying you don't, but what can you be investing in to help enrich the lives of others, right? And so if
Yeah.
you're not checking how much money you have to do that piece of it, that's an important piece also, because God will continue to pour into that reserve if you are utilizing it to help those around you. So the other big question, aside from do you check your bank balance to know whether or not you have kind of an issue with it, is how often do you talk about money? Because if you don't talk freely about money and have an unemotional attachment to it, then that's a big red flag also, because that tells me that you're in a place of shame about whatever financial position you're in, whether you have a ton of money and you're ashamed of that, or you have none and you're ashamed of it. If you're unable to talk about money open, honestly, and authentically, that's a big red flag. If you talk about it consistently all the time, that's a big red flag, because that's a piece of your ego. Like, look at me, look at me. I've done
Yeah.
all of this and earned all of this money. So I'm going to flash it out there on social media. I'm going to put my cars, my houses, whatever. If you make it that important that you're talking about it all the time, that also means that you actually have one of these challenges with money.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think it's really good for people to take a second right now and just kind of reflect on like where are they on this spectrum, because it is both
Mhm.
ends of the spectrum, right? Like you're going to have an issue at some point, might as well work through it. So, why do you feel like how was this your calling? Why is it this the narrative? Why was this so important to you?
It's interesting. So, along the awareness journey, when I started it out in the restaurant, I lost in that first 2 years $600,000.
Jeez. Sounds like a restaurant business.
Yes, like building the restaurant, like market awareness. The location I picked wasn't highly visible, so building the clientele there was extremely difficult in the first couple of years. I will say it took me 6 years to get to it, but I became the number one store in our franchise and have remained there since then. So, and there's 24 stores, not a huge business, but I'm number one, right? And so what happened for me was I was without. And then I got into, once I started to have some, I invested it with a construction partner in a multifamily real estate deal to help improve people's lives. Like, it was a community that the buildings were in need of repair and fixing and all of that. And I wanted to buy it to help make their lives better. I did that, and the partner I went into business with didn't do his fair share, and I lost another $500,000 in that project. So,
Wow.
so prior to that point, though, I always had money. It always flowed to me. I never had an issue with it. And then I get into these points in my life that I feel were also divinely given to me for the learning, so that I could come back to who I was, where it flowed to me, and then teach people how to get out of it. And I had lived through it myself. So that's why I feel a lot of that is my calling, right? Is people struggle so much with money, whether, to your point, they don't have any or they have a lot. They struggle a lot with money. And so I truly believe I had to go through all of those spectrums to now be able to say, okay, I'm here to help and to do my full purpose on earth.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about money, and a lot of people define money as success. So I want to ask you,
Yeah.
what is your definition of success, and what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
So for me, it's freedom. I want to be able to be wherever I want to be at any given moment. Um, and I don't want to be bound by anything. I want to serve and do what I'm supposed to do from anywhere in the world, and to help whoever it is I need to at that moment in time. So one of the things that I do to keep me centered on where my purpose is in the morning, I get up early every morning and I sit and do my prayer in time and spend my time with God. I go through Bible, I journal, and I do whatever reading it is I'm doing at that moment. Right now, I'm reading The Flow State by Frederick Dobson. So I do that to start my day off every single day. I do not miss that. The next step in my day is to make sure that I move my body, because in those times when I'm out for a walk, when I'm out connecting to nature, which is where I find God most, I find that information will flow through me, on where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to do it. And so those two things combined together have kept the flow of resources coming to me in order to sustain that freedom. And then from that point in time, I've really learned so much about not controlling things and being in surrender. And so
Mm,
that's the third thing that I practice every single day. There's always something I don't want to do. For instance, I had a meeting last night with some people who are wanting to invest in one of my businesses. And the way in which they want to be in the business is a little uncomfortable for me because of the things I've experienced with other business partners. And I have to sit back and say, okay, what in this moment, what is the divine trying to tell me? Am I to learn how to create this relationship this time, or allow him to create this relationship this time and be comfortable, and then have help given, I give help to them in the ways they need it. So the prayer in the morning, the moving my body to connect to God and nature, and then the surrender are my three things to make sure that I have full freedom in my day.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, I had your significant other on the show, Matt, and
Yeah.
you are also doing 365 hard.
Yes.
So shout out to that, because and I said this to him, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on this because I did with him.
Yeah.
But like so when I did 75 hard, it's funny. A lot of people go, I don't have the time to do it. Like, I don't have the time for the workouts. I don't have the time for the water. But the reality was, I was more productive in every other area of my life during that time.
Yep.
So like, I'm excited, and I said this to him too. I'm excited to see the growth you guys have this year.
Yes.
While doing that all year, because it's going to be absolutely massive. And I know you're focusing on things like writing the book and doing all those types of things, which is absolutely incredible. So I want to ask you this question, which I ask not every time, but a lot of times on the show. I want you to fast forward to the end of your life, and everything you've built does not exist anymore. The businesses don't exist. The book that you're writing will not exist. The podcast doesn't exist. And you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you want that sentence to be?
Start living today. Yeah.
I love it.
Start living today.
I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they work with you? How do they follow you? What's all the good stuff?
Best place to catch me is on Instagram. My handle is MS Angela Goodman. So Ms. Angela Goodman on Instagram. And that's the best place to get me. I answer all my own DMs. I don't have an assistant or anything. So they can follow me there and they can catch me there. They can also check out my podcast too, Evolve Through God. That started in December, and that's been quite a fun journey as well. I need to get you on there too.
Let's do it. I'm ready. Let's do it whenever you're ready.
Awesome.
So, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called the Growth Now Movement, that question is: in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth was actually with Ed. Like, I attribute everything to that day. I was in a small group in his living room coaching with him. Everyone had the opportunity to ask him a question and hot seat with him. And all but one person went before me, and they all asked business questions. And I got a lot of the business questions answered before it was my turn. And I sat in the chair across from him and I started to cry. And I said, I just want to know what you see in me. And for 20 minutes, Ed poured into me and told me what he saw in me. And that day, he told me how much he believed in me, and he told me what he felt I was meant to do with my life. And that day has shifted everything into what it's become.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Angela, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with my audience and being you and helping so many people overcome this narrative that was ingrained in us, usually at a young age. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've had a great time.